One of the universal constants is that every single species never actually leaves its barbaric nature. They simply refine it. This is known by the simple look at some like the Garden, who will constantly move their tails in certain ways to show their different pleasure of the situation, or displeasure in some cases. If you look at one of these folks, you can find out that they will simply stick their tail up straight if they are about to attack. Most times, this will allow people to diffuse the situation. You look at the Santeng, and their insectoid legs allow them to simply walk around in ways that make other species almost envious. If you look inside their ships, they're circular, so they can simply maneuver their way around, clinging onto the walls and ceilings, and simply acting like the insectoids they are. When it comes down to the newest member of the galactic community, everyone believed that they were a joke. These, what do they call them again? Yes, humans were something that threw things. They threw things when they were happy, they threw things when they were sad. It was normal that if you were going to be on a crew with one of these humans, then you would simply remind yourself to be out of their throwing range, because if you weren't, there was a good chance that they would throw many, many things. And if you were very unlucky, they would get angry and throw you. There are many instances of humans being able to use their ability to grab a hold of things, using their body weight and shifting their center of gravity on those two massive legs they have, as they would pick up any of the opponents and simply throw them off to the side, forcing them to crash into whatever heavy and painful device they might hit. In some cases, this left the carapaces being cracked, bones being broken, many lacerations, contusions, and unfortunately, in a few cases, death. This was something that made many of the other species believe that they were unfit to be in the galactic community. So plans were made. At first, the Zarnden were the first ones to go against the humans, and they believed they would be able to simply land on the planet and take care of the humans as long as they stayed out of the throwing range. What they didn't realize is that humans are good at making devices that will throw items much, much further than the human arm can attain. They found out these strange ballistic attachments that they had would shoot projectiles incredibly fast and accurately at ranges that totally boggled the mind, well out of the range of any plasma-based weapon system that they had. And if you got close, you were in more danger, as the humans would use their death orbs to throw at you. You would simply have time to see another piece of metal pop off the top, and just long enough to pray to whatever deity you choose, before, well, there wasn't much left usually. With this, it was decided that once that invasion was a complete and total failure, another species, the Klentak, would actually try. The Klentak decided that they would assault the humans at a very farther distance, as they were more of a novel species. They were mostly amphibious, as they had many, many a craft that would be on the water. They believed that using the vast oceans of several of the human planets, they could simply land their ships and use their own ballistic weapons to fire much, much further than humans could, not realizing that humans would have the same idea and simply threw bigger projectiles their way at much farther distances. So that invasion failed as well. Humans were definitely getting angry at this point, threatening that if another species decided to invade their territory, they would break out, as they called it, the good stuff. Nobody understood this. The Valerians were the next ones to try. This time, they landed and tried to use guided weapons and stayed up in the air, as they are an avian species, but used their inner atmospheric fighters and their aerospace fighters to try and hit the humans so far up in the atmosphere that they couldn't be struck back. What they didn't expect was the humans to use propellants. Propellants that slowly burned and sent projectiles, throwing them through space at such speeds that they could not dodge away. Many of the aerospace fighters are not very maneuverable once they enter the atmosphere anyway, and they were simply blown to pieces. Many of them crashed on the planet, others ejected, trying to fly away using their own wings, and yet the humans would go up in their own vehicles. Their own vessels would reach up and shoot them down as they were trying to fly away, many of them begging for help as they tried desperately to fly as fast as they could away. The only time they had a chance is when they actually dove straight to the ground and surrendered to the first humans, and maybe, just maybe, the humans wouldn't simply throw them around. It is also noted that humans do not take kindly to their territory being invaded. In a few cases, some warlord would try to go in and, as the humans call it, muscle their way into the territory. The humans, being an extremely stout, very large, and very strong species compared to the galactic normal, would simply go in and remind the warlords what exactly strength was. In a few cases, it was shown that the humans would simply grab the warlord by the throat, raise them up very high, and then slam them down several different times on the negotiating table. This was done because most of the time the warlords would say that the humans either bowed down to them and worshiped them basically as gods, or they would annihilate the human's family. As we found out, humans get very, very dangerous and throw things much farther and much faster if you threaten their families. They pack bond very well. After the invasions, many species tried to become friends with the humans to figure out how they become so good at throwing things. As it turned out, as they started to learn more and more of humanity's histories, they realized that much of their warfare was based on who could throw what the farthest and the most accurate. Who could reach out and touch someone in a way that would make them say, ouch. This was why the humans were so good. It was also of note that not a single human ship ever left their own dockyards without being armed. They always had some sort of projectile weapon, some sort of detection system, something to defend, and something definitely to offend against anyone who would even consider facing them. This led to another issue to many of the other species, as piracy was beginning to rise, and quickly, among many of the neighboring species around humanity. Many of the pirates of their own species believed humanity would be an easy mark. They would be easy to take down, and they found out very, very quickly that humanity does not like it when you, as they put it, mess with their boats. They take it personal. And any professional will tell you, do not make the fight personal. Humans at several points would somehow bring weapons out of nowhere, sometimes launching them out of their own cargo holds just to fire back at pirates that were trying to take their ships and their cargo. It was noted at this point that many pirates tried to disable human ships, but human ships were also extremely durable. Why? Because they needed to take whatever was being thrown at them. Humans showed their old, what they call these? Hold on, let me check this. Gladiator, that held a large shield in front of its unarmored torso. This was their defense against somebody throwing things at them, even though throwing things back in their own history, at that point, of course, was very rare. Projectile weapons were usually simply thrown via the strength of the arm itself. The appendage would tell you exactly how far, how fast, and the skill of the one throwing it would tell how accurate. But now things had changed. Things had expanded, and now many of the convoys around the area would not travel without humans inside their convoy, as this kept many of the pirates at bay. Many of the pirates, at best estimate, lost over 50% traveling into human space. By most metrics, it is extremely possible that that 50% is actually more like 90%, as the amount of piracy attacks dwindled down to almost nothing via most reports. And why? Because the humans were good at throwing things. Now, one of the major empires The Shafa decided that they would want to take the humans as their own. The Nafa were a very dangerous species. The humans called them space dogs or space wolves, something along that line. It was always a slang term, as the Nafa were simply, if you looked at them, looked very similar to what the humans call a werewolf, a very human shaped dog that wore very little clothing, but was also much larger than most species, in fact, larger than the humans. However, when shown side by side as far as strength goes, the humans could match them strike for strike. And if the human was in any way, shape, or form quick by its own standard, it could easily outpace the Shinafa without any issue at all. But the issue was not that. The issue was the numbers. The Shni-Nafa decided that they would simply overrun the humans and force them into submission. But that was not just the only reason. They had developed a taste for human. This was not known at the time, but the Shni-Nafa royalty had found other humans, and since they had fallen in battle, they decided, why waste the meat? And they realized very quickly the taste of humanity was very addicting. In fact, just mentioning the humans in front of the Shinafa was enough to make much of their royal court to start to drool visibly. In a few cases, when humans would visit, simply trying to bring some sort of peace to the area, some sort of trade agreement, they would never return. It was well noted, and eventually one video did come out where an ambassador was right there, a very, very thin female, dressed in their own military attire, walked in with another male who was rather wide, considering. But the male never spoke. The female simply went up to the emperor's court and stated how humanity wanted to bring peace between them and start trade agreements, start to work with them to bring more wealth and more prosperity to both humanity and the Shninafa. The emperor laughed at her, and when she could not figure out what was going on, she looked over to the empress. The empress was visibly drooling and growling at the ambassador. The ambassador tried to reach back into her belt for something, but didn't have a chance. Before they realized what was going on, the royal family itself had somehow shown up and simply jumped on the humans themselves. The human male began to fight, cursing and screaming the whole time, breaking several bones of the Shinafa royal family, and in one case killing one of the heirs as he tried to take a bite out of the humans. In fact, the human grabbed a hold of the neck of the heir and simply twisted as fast as he could, and with an audible crack, it was over. But that did not stop the royal family, as some sort of feeding frenzy had started. As soon as the female had been torn open and her blood sprayed across the ground, not only the royal family, but the guards lost all control and dove towards them both. Though fighting valiantly, they did not survive. This was sent as a warning after the first few colonies went dark. Many of the ships shone up and saw that Shinafa warships were there, and they demanded a reason why. Why were they there for humanity? And as a threat to humanity, they showed this video with the message that this was humanity's birthright. The humans were not happy. They shared this video with their own, and the Shinafa believed that their incursion would turn into an easy invasion and they would be able to take care of the human territory. They only received one response. It was a demand for the Shinafa to leave or else. And when they dared to ask, why should we? The humans waited a long time before they sent one single message. You forget who we are. The Shneena decided that they would not wait after that message, as it was a clear threat to their own domination of the species and this sector, and they knew if they could take down the humans with ease, that all the others would simply bow down to the Empire and they would not have to risk any more ships. But just as they began to take the next colony, they were absolutely shocked, as not only did a massive amount of human ships, anything from the smallest cargo vessel to the largest of their own, what they called dreadnoughts, to include carriers in that group, battleships, even a space station they seemed to be able to move close to them, was on their way to intercept the Xenopha fleet. The Shinafa decided that they would show humanity what true warfare was like. But before they even had a chance to power up their main energy cannons, they received a total shock. Alarms went off as an insane amount of ordnance so large, moving at such a speed it would be able to pierce their own battleships stem to stern without even slowing down. Other ordnance was coming in, was reading chemical ordnance. These were going to burst against the hull and rip them to pieces. They were also seeing a whole bunch of smaller craft. These were unmanned drones coming in at a number that was absolutely insane. All of them armed with some sort of ballistic cannon that was going to throw more ordnance at them. The Shneena in their own pride, continued to move forward, and just as they were able to charge up their cannons, the first rounds hit. And as each of their vessels shook and many of them exploded or were disabled by the first rounds, they got the message from their home planet. And with that, every admiral, general, even the ensign, it didn't matter who they were, suddenly realized that they might have bitten off more than they could chew. They saw the video sent from the humans. It reminded them not to forget who they are and what they can do. They watched in horror as the humans had strapped engines onto a massive asteroid and launched it into their own home planet. They had somehow thrown a giant stone to the Shinafa homeworld. And as they looked, the resulting impact caused the entire mantle of the planet to crack. Their own supervolcanoes immediately erupted from the burst in pressure. The ocean that it landed into instantly boiled, and the shock wave was enough to alter the planet itself. It did not destroy the planet. However, the planet itself was now uninhabitable. And if they did not return their fleet soon, they would not be able to get any survivors off the other side of the world before the world itself killed them. The Shneena tried to run, and they received a message from one of these massive, what they call dreadnoughts. Leaving so soon? But this party just got started. As the Shinafa tried to turn so they could activate their FTL engines, they realized that the humans had not stopped firing, and now they were pulling their main guns away from the battle. Now they were exposing their engines. Now they were well and truly fucked. Now, after the Shinafa fell, the royal family, no longer being in existence, now are limited to a few colony worlds. Though they protect their own homeworld, even though it will take a long time before it becomes even close to habitable, it is still their homeworld. Humanity, in a surprise move, decided to send out a message to the galaxy at large. The home planet of the Shinafa is to now be considered off limits. It is quarantined. No one is to assault them. They have just lost some of the most important things that any species could ever think of losing. And of course, everyone listened because they didn't want the same thing to happen to their own worlds, because they all know the humans are very good at throwing things. And when they do, well, you see what happens.